Hey everybody, Dustin DePirac here, columnist Andy Graham. Pat Bean almost made a cameo, and he decided against it. I don't know. I guess he's shy. I'm not sure what that was about. Anyway, we're previewing Indiana Navy. IU jumps outside the conference play a little bit, but plays a game that, in a way, I guess you could say they'd circled on the calendar. Not necessarily because of the importance of it necessarily, but a game that they knew was going to be a difficult prep the entire time. In Navy, they've been preparing for this triple option since March. I mean, they really actually started taking time out to really prepare for, dealing with the flexbone formation, the triple option. Not a lot of teams run it. Nobody else they play runs it. And they've made a point to spend time on it, so they didn't have to just take this week and learn about it. So I guess, Andy, you were, I believe, a fullback or wishbone fullback, I guess, once upon a time.
Yeah, it's in a former life.
In a former life. So what are the biggest things that Indiana need to know, understand, take care of if they're gonna stop this thing?
That's a bit different the way Navy runs it. It's actually almost a speed option to the fullback. I mean, and you better hit that guy. You better not forget about him, or they'll slip. They'll have a quick opener up front. They'll do a lot of cut blocking, a lot of trap blocking. The defensive tackles will have to play square, keep their shoulders square up the field. And I think actually the play of the defensive tackles for Indiana is going to be crucial in this game because, the thing that can really disrupt Navy and get them off schedule or behind the chains or whatever phrase Kevin Wilson might choose to employ is defensive penetration.
Yeah.
You could blow up the option if you get defensive tackles into the backfield quickly. And the last couple of games, Indiana has shown that they've gotten really good play from Adam Raplogle and Larry Black and Sliger and the rest of those guys who have played up front. They had 10 tackles for loss against Ohio State and 9 against Northwestern. When they put both of those teams in third and long situations, both of those teams had some answers with really good quarterback elusiveness and scrambling, and also passing games that were reasonably formidable.
Yeah.
Navy, on the other hand, even though they've been buoyed in the last couple of weeks by the emergence of a freshman quarterback, Keenan Reynolds, is Keenan Reynolds? Is that the right
Keenan Reynolds. Yeah.
Yeah. He came in and they were down 8 in the fourth quarter at Air Force, and he went 6 for 6 in the air and brought him back, and they won that game in overtime. Then in his first career start at Central Michigan, which is a team that beat Iowa earlier in the year, last Friday he threw 3 touchdown passes, and so he has lent what could be a very lethal play-action pass element to the option attack that they run. When I played in high school, we didn't really have a passing game, but the wishbone was still so effective. We still went 7-3 my senior year, which was the year that we ran it, and it was basically unstoppable. There were certain power plays where the blockers could just outnumber the defenders at the point of attack because it's such a contained formation. They can get there more quickly than defenders who are trying to react can. And I think the good news is Indiana's worked on this against this since the spring. The caveat to that, though, is that whomever was running that offense in practice, whether it was
is not nearly as fast.
It's not going to be nearly as swift or as slick as Navy's going to run it Saturday. So we'll see how that is. But I think if Indiana gets pretty regular defensive penetration from its tackles and its ends, and if they can put Navy into a fair amount of 2nd and 8 or second and 12 or 3rd and 8, things like that. Navy doesn't have as much capacity to overcome that and sustain a drive as teams like Northwestern and Ohio State do. So that's I think a big key to this game.
Yeah, no, I wanted to take back and hit on a couple points there. Basically, as they kind of all said, I mean, talking to a bunch of the players this week, they said, you've got to take the fullback out. I mean, the way it works, where Navy's not a true wishbone, it's called a flex bone. Right. They move, instead of in a true wishbone, it's fullback behind the running back and running backs behind the fullback, 2 running backs behind the fullback, and it sort of forms what looks like a wishbone. Right. The difference in flexbone is you move those 2 running backs up closer to the line of scrimmage. They line up as what they call slot backs, and they're sort of more of a kind of speed option coming around. They're kind of wide receivers. They're kind of tailbacks, running at the same time. So, but basically the fullback is the dive man. I mean, he comes up the middle and they'll take 3 yards a carry there. They'll take little chunks because, they're willing to go 4 downs, take 3, and you're at 4th and 1, you go for it. Basically, and you got to feel confident about getting 3. So that's the whole key of if you could take the dive man out, if you can make them believe that they can't just keep giving it to the fullback and taking 3-yard gains, right. Then you force them outside a little bit. If you force them off the chains, they've got to do a little bit more than they like to do. You try to make them throw as little as possible. And as you said, Adam Raploga was kind of the biggest key there. He's been without question the most dominant defensive player, the best defensive player Indiana has. I mean, he's been steady throughout his career. But he's been, I think, as dominant as he's ever been. He's won the line of scrimmage in ways that we haven't necessarily even seen from him. And Navy, the tough part about dealing with Navy's offensive line is they chop block, but they're also dealing with smaller guys. That's the reason why they cut block, not chop block.
Right.
Cut block, just kind of go at guys' knees, just trying to take them out. They're usually dealing with smaller guys. You don't like to, considering what you have to do to be in the Navy, there's not a lot of 300-pound guys who want to do that. You've got to be able to run a mile and a half in 10:30. There's not a lot of 300-pound guys who can do that. So basically, you're not going to see the huge guys. So that's what they do. And basically, that's the biggest thing really for the defensive tackles to not get thrown off by that. Even the fact that people are coming at them low. Basically, they're trying to just kind of keep them, just keep hands on man. Basically, is the point, and make sure that they can't get. Yeah, they can't get to the knees. And basically, what they've just said over and over and over again is it's just about being assignment sound. It's about understanding that you can't try to do somebody else's job. You don't try to make up for, if you give up a play, you don't try to make up for it by being a hero, because that's where they will get you.
Yeah, and that's really true. And Indiana hasn't really shown real well in that regard against Northwestern and Ohio State and other teams that'll run some option look. So that's really crucial on Saturday. Another really important thing, I think, is to have early efficiency and effectiveness and efficacy on offense,
of course,
for Indiana, because Navy runs the ball, as you say. I mean, like Kevin Wilson noted, 3 yards, a 3-yard gain on a rushing play
is a really good play for Navy. Them. Yeah.
Once they get over midfield, they're always going to go for it on 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and a lot of times they'll be able to get that with that kind of attack. So they will control the ball. The clock will run. Even when they were losing fairly big early against really quality opponents like Notre Dame and Penn State, those opponents were only getting 6 or 8 possessions in an entire game.
Yeah.
So Indiana can't afford to have like an entire half where their offense doesn't do anything like they've seen in a couple of games, or even a quarter.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the possessions will be precious. So that's another key for Indiana, is to get off to a good start offensively, where they get points out of possessions early. And try to get a lead on Navy. I think that also would be very helpful.
Yeah, no, I mean, if a team doesn't throw, the best thing you can do is get a lead on them, because it's tough to get points quickly. It's tough to move drives quickly. That's not what the offense is built for, and that, all those teams have a hard time doing that. Georgia Tech, Air Force, if you get a big lead on them, they're in trouble, but if you fall behind, you're in trouble.
Correct.
Basically, is kind of how it goes. I mean,
Correct.
You got to say though. I mean, Indiana obviously has a counter. I mean, I think it's sort of right now. I think it's tough to really put in perspective right now how, I guess, potent this Indiana passing attack has already become. And they are leading the Big Ten in passing. They're one of the better teams in Division I in passing right now. I mean, I was talking to Navy's coach this week, Ken Niumiatalolo. I think pretty close. I think I'm right. But he was just saying, they've scored on everybody. You look at them and they've scored on Ohio State, they scored on Michigan State, and the coaches outside are noticing that. I mean, that kind of proves that Navy's coach, the guys that scout Indiana right now, are saying, whoa, they're putting points up. Like, how do you stop them? And Navy has a pretty decent defense. They run an odd front, 3-4. They got some really good players. Keegan Wetzel, I think, has 4 sacks, 5.5 tackles for loss. Pretty decent player over there. Also has a 1,600 on his SATs, by the way, in case you were wondering. Like 3.89, and he's going to be a submarine captain.
And the midshipmen aren't going to quit no matter what the score is.
No.
They're going to keep playing.
No, absolutely not.
Indiana scored 24 points at least in every game this year.
Yeah.
And do you think it's going to be enough Saturday, Dad? That's what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, that's the question. I think, like I said, I think the big thing is when you score them. I mean, I think if if Navy gets a lead, they're going to score more points than if they fall behind. I mean, it's sort of like, where are you? What are you playing from ahead? Are you playing from behind? What does that force you to do? I mean, I think if Navy gets a rhythm, then they can hang 30-40. And, obviously Indiana hasn't shown they can deal with the option real well yet. It's a different kind of option again. Kane Coulter's not going to be there. Braxton Miller's not going to be there. Keenan Reynolds is a good player, I'm sure. His coach, I'm not going to try to pronounce it again, called him one of the most mature kids he's ever seen. He's a true freshman. Not the type of kid that it's not like he came to school early and got a chance to really learn everything and that kind of stuff. I mean, he was when you come to school early at Navy, you go through plebe summer, so it's not the same. But yet, just since camp, he's been able to pick everything up pretty fast. He's a really impressive kid, but again, he's not Kane Coulter. He's not Braxton Miller. He's not the guy that's going to break open an 80-yard run whenever.
Navy's
I think they have a
goal. What do you think?
I think Indiana wins, and I think Indiana has to win it. To be honest, this is the game they have to get because they've come so close against, two of the best teams in the Big Ten, in Michigan State and Ohio State. This is a game I think they have to have. They have to get a win that gets them momentum. I mean, they're starting to get momentum outside of the program. Recruiting stuff like that has been kind of big this week. But I think they need to win. They need to win a football game. They need to win a football game, and they need to stop somebody.
I agree with that totally, and I think that it's going to be. I think this will be one of those sort of crux games for the season.
It's a tipping point. Tipping point because if they win this one, Illinois is beatable. Iowa's not unbeatable. Wisconsin and Penn State are not juggernauts as they have been in the past.
They're playing better, though.
They're playing better. They're both getting it together, and Purdue's had it kind of rough.
Purdue's mysterious at this
point. So there's a lot of mysterious things. There's a lot of things that could happen if they take this one and they get some momentum. So we're going to have to cut this one off, but thanks, everybody.